Big data is the future of education because it changes how we learn and how we train people. See, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, we moved from a system where only the very rich could afford to pay tutors to have their children schooled, to a system where all the children in a society got education and proper schooling. But that meant that the schooling, the education system had to be mass-produced. That meant that all of the kids received the same kind of standard length of training in a standardized system. And that means that it wasn't like a tutor who could personalize and individualize the teaching based on the individual needs and learning styles. Now the beauty, the hope of big data is that we can take education as it is mass-produced and personalize it again. Bring it back to the individual so that the individual can learn at his or her pace, with his or her preferences, with his or her needs, addressing his or her shortcomings, constraints, and abilities, so that everyone out there is not just meeting a particular standard, but everyone out there can meet his or her potential. So this new future of big data is created by observing and thereby gathering data about how children learn, how students learn, what kind of mistakes they make, what kind of materials they find interesting. And as we gather that data, we then take the data and we analyze it. And we begin to understand over time the individualized learning style, the individualized ability and constraints, the hurdles and the opportunities that each one of those face. And so then we can take lessons and lesson plans and teaching sequences, break them down, rearrange them. We can essentially reconstruct education. We have to begin with the teachers. The teachers are the key factor for success because they are on the forefront. They are the people that take knowledge and ideas, begin to steer up a conversation about it, and bring that knowledge to the students. Now, for many, many years, for decades, if not centuries, teachers amassed a great intuitive sense of what works and what doesn't in the classroom. With big data applied correctly, they will now have the ability to not just go by their intuitions, but to really go comprehensively after the actual facts, the empirical evidence of the learning and the understanding that goes on in the classroom. And it will help them be much more effective teachers. I'm not only talking about efficiency here. In fact, efficiency is less important. I'm talking about effectiveness. The ability to bring to the teaching process and the learning context the ability to push people to achieve their potential. That's what the individual teachers will be able to do with big data. It's not that we will know who is a good teacher or who is a bad teacher. In fact, that's completely secondary. But what we will be able to do with big data is to help each and every teacher to achieve his or her potential of teaching so that they become the best possible teachers that they are. And if they reach their own potential, then they can shine in the classroom. They can create a learning context in which the pupils will be successful. If big data helps the teachers to adopt the learning process that is most effective, for example, by choosing the most effective learning materials, by choosing the most effective learning artifacts, what kind of experiments to make in the chemistry lesson, or what kind of videos to look at, perhaps in literature or language, what kind of music to listen to in the music lessons. And if big data helps them to create a unique classroom experience for the teachers, at the level of the classroom, at the level of the schools and the headmasters, what we're able to is to help them take the fantastic resources that they have in terms of teachers, in terms of schools and infrastructure, and assign them, allocate them to the students and the classes so that this allocation is most effective. The best teacher is not the best teacher for everyone. The best teacher is the best teacher for a particular student, for a particular group of people. So this will help the headmasters assign the best teacher to the most appropriate class at a level of detail and a level of comprehensiveness that we just simply haven't seen before. The future of society, particularly of Western societies, depends almost entirely on our ability to educate future generations. It's their ability to make sense of the world that will decide of whether the society prospers, the economy does well or not. And therefore, local municipalities have a huge task, a duty, a responsibility to ensure our society's future. Their task is not to micromanage what kind of material is being taught in a particular classroom, but to create the context of learning, the context of education in which we are able to gather the data and to analyze it so that we can make the learning process more effective. Their task is to make possible the context, the infrastructure, the institutional infrastructure in which headmasters can be effective, schools can be effective, teachers can be effective in how they teach and what they teach, and students can be successful. In the last 2 decades, perhaps, IT strategies in the educational sector focused, and rightly so focused, on infrastructure, on the ability to have computers in the classroom, on the ability to have schools wired up, connected to the internet, digital educational content being made available. And that was good. But now we are entering a world that is data-driven, that is focused on our ability to collect data comprehensively and to do the analysis. So that means that we also need to adjust our IT strategy, that we need to think about the IT strategy not in terms of wires or in terms of networks, but in terms of data flows, so that we create a focus, a focal point in the IT strategy that aims to strengthen our ability to collect data and to analyze it.